Most guys, when they're facing an unwanted separation or divorce, try to save their relationship from a place of fear, not logic. Even though logically, they know what they should be doing. They know that they're supposed to give her space. They know that they're not supposed to call all the time or text all the time or send long emotional messages about everything they've realized. They know they're supposed to be an emotional leader in regulating their own emotions. And they also know that they're supposed to create a safe environment for her where she feels that she can share her feelings without feeling that her feelings are wrong or being made to feel guilty about how she's feeling. So most guys know all of this and know that that's what they're supposed to do in order to save their relationship. But when it comes down to it, where most guys actually struggle is implementing all of these things that they know they're supposed to be doing. And so when the time comes to actually implement these things correctly, they collapse back into the same behaviors and patterns that pushed her away and made her want to leave the relationship to begin with. And guys, if you're struggling right now with the implementation of all these concepts that you know you should be doing, leave me a comment and let me know. I want to know exactly what part you're struggling with. So leave me a comment and let me know. But let's break down what's actually happening when you do collapse back in and when you are struggling to implement these things. Let's really delve into what's going on inside of you. And really, it's not that the logical brain has disappeared on you. It's the fact that your nervous system decides to override all of that logic the moment that fear starts to spike inside of you. That's why if you watch my videos or maybe watch some of the other videos out there, you can intellectually agree, understand the logic and the concepts, and feel more calm temporarily. But then suddenly you're laying in bed at 11 p.m. at night and you're replaying every little thing that happened during the relationship and where things went wrong, and you're taking these concepts and you're meshing them all together, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with that need to send her that long emotional message of everything that you've realized and everything you've discovered, at the same time owning up to your share of why the relationship fell apart. And the reason you're doing that is because the panic starts to set in and your nervous system kicks in and thinks that doing something is better than doing nothing. And from my experience, I've noticed that the long emotional messages that you guys are sending aren't even written bad. They're actually written pretty well. But the thing is, when you do that, you're actually creating more pressure on her because she's already feeling how she's feeling. She's already feeling that she's emotionally suffocated. And so when you send those long emotional text messages to her, all that's doing is creating an additional emotional burden on her because now she feels guilty and she's feeling the pressure of everything that you're processing. So that's why, guys, it's really important to lay off the pressure. And pressure comes in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. And a lot of you guys do have the thought in the back of your head that if you tell her how you're feeling, that it's going to spark some type of curiosity in her. And she's going to look at you as an emotional leader and she's going to think, oh, wow, he's sharing all these feelings with me. I'm going to fall back in love with him because he finally understands me. But guys, women don't work that easily once she's gotten to the point where she feels that the best move is to separate or to divorce. It's not as easy as a long emotional text messages. At that point, the best thing for you to do is to literally release the emotional burden that you've placed on her. You've got to let her feelings subside. You've got to start making different choices in yourself so she can start to see that you're making different choices with or without how she's feeling about it. By the time a woman tells you that she wants to separate or divorce, she's already been emotionally withdrawing from the relationship. And so any realizations that you might be bringing to her now doesn't matter to her because she's been internally processing for months, sometimes even years by this point. So while for you, it feels like this emotional breakthrough that you really want to share with her, from her point of view, what she's experiencing is more emotional processing directed at her. So that's the disconnect. And that's why in so many cases, what you keep doing isn't working. And that's why it's actually even hurting your relationship further, because you don't even realize you're doing it. And when you are doing it, the nervous system has overridden the logic so much that you literally can't control yourself. And every time that fear creeps in, that you send those messages and that you're reaching out like that, you're emotionally pushing her further away. So even if you're sending a text message that's relatively self-aware and holding yourself accountable, it can still feel very emotionally overwhelming to her, and emotionally long, emotionally heavy, and emotionally loaded, centered around you and your feelings rather than what she's currently going through. And here's the key, guys. When someone's emotionally overwhelmed, even a seemingly healthy text message can feel like emotional weight. And that's why, guys, if you're on the brink of separation or divorce right now, it's really important to stop trying to get her to see things from your point of view. Stop trying to get her to see how you're feeling, and stop with the long realizations about what you've discovered about the relationship. Because all that's doing is adding more fuel to the fire. And the fire right now is already out of control. What's important to start doing instead is to start regulating yourself. And what that looks like is starting to become very aware of how you're communicating with her, and also becoming aware of when your nervous system is starting to override all the logic of all those intellectual concepts that you know are the better route to take. You want to be aware of when you talk. Are you responding from a place of fear, anxiety, or panic? And then you also want to be very aware of how your response will affect her. In a lot of cases, a lot of you guys have no idea about the way that your actions and your words are actually making her feel in the moment. And that's a big challenge that you're facing, because if you have no idea how she's actually feeling, how on earth are you going to save the relationship? So you want to learn to start responding from a place of calm, a place of steadiness, and a place of consistency that is really focused on really trying to understand how she's feeling in the moment. Because a well thought out response indicates that you're actually understanding rather than trying to pressure her or persuade her. And so to regulate yourself, you've got to push through that discomfort. You have to learn when your nervous system is stepping in and overriding the logic. Because if you can't recognize when your nervous system is overriding that logic and tell it to, whoa, hold your horses, you're really going to have a hard time salvaging the relationship and rebuilding it. And your wife isn't going to want to have anything to do with you, because from her point of view, she isn't seeing you making different choices. You have to choose not to let the fear override the logic. You have to choose not to let attachment panic override your strategy. And you have to choose not to let the emotional urgency that you're feeling right now override your patience. And that's why I always say it's not about changing yourself, it's about making different choices. And watch this video next if you're trying to change and you're struggling, because I go into detail as to why you should be making choices rather than changes. But before you can begin rebuilding your relationship, you've got to regulate your emotions. Now, I want to take a quick moment and I want to ask you, what do you think emotional regulation actually looks like? Because I've noticed in my experience that most men think emotional regulation means emotionally shutting down or avoiding conflict by never having an opinion or a point of view, or they think that it means silently suffering and pretending that nothing ever bothers them. So take a moment and let me know what you think emotional regulation looks like. Because like I said, it's not just about understanding the concept, it's also about learning how to implement it consistently. And if you're realizing right now that fear keeps overriding the choices that you know you should be making, and you want help learning how to regulate yourself so you don't keep pushing her further away, book a call with me. And definitely check out this next video on why changes aren't working and why it's super important to make different choices instead. I really hope this video was helpful, guys. If so, Hit a like for me and subscribe to the channel for more videos like it. As always, let's focus on staying happy, staying healthy, and of course, falling back in love.